It is 7 in the morning in Georgetown, Penang. The sun has barely cleared the rooftops. The air is still cool enough to be comfortable. And at the end of a narrow street in the heart of the old city, there is already a queue of 40 people. They are waiting for a bowl of noodles. Specifically, they are waiting for the Char Kway Teow, made by a man who has been standing at the same wok, at the same stall, at the same corner for the past 40 years. He works alone. He makes one plate at a time. He does not take orders in advance. He does not accept complaints about the wait. The queue does not move quickly. Some of the people in it know this. They brought a newspaper. One woman has brought a camp stool. A tourist at the back checks his phone, considers leaving, does not leave. And when the plate arrives, when the flat rice noodles come off the wok dark and smoky and glossy with soy sauce and bean sprouts and cockles and egg, nobody who waited said it was not worth it. Nobody. In Penang, there are 4 hawker stalls that operate at this level. 4 dishes made by 4 people whose skills are so specific, so practiced, so impossibly refined that they have been given an unofficial title that the whole city knows: the 4 Heavenly Kings. And this is their story. Before we begin, subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my videos. With that being said, let's get right in. Penang is widely considered the food capital of Malaysia. Malaysia is widely considered one of the great food cultures of the world. Within Penang's food culture, which encompasses Hokkien, Teow, Cantonese, Malay, Indian, and Peranakan traditions, all developed in specific ways by the specific communities that settled in this specific place, the hawker stall tradition is the foundation on which everything else rests. A hawker stall, at its simplest, is a small food operation, a single cook, a single or small number of dishes, a portable or semi-permanent setup in a market, a coffee shop, or a standalone street position. The hawker tradition in Penang dates back to the earliest days of the settlement. Migrant communities who needed to eat, could not afford restaurants, and began selling food from portable setups to other migrants who were in the same position. Over generations, these setups became permanent, the dishes became refined, the cooks became specialists, and the best of the specialists became local legends. The 4 Heavenly Kings is not an official designation. There is no certificate, no awards committee, no formal process by which a hawker stall achieves this status. It is entirely the product of collective local consensus, the accumulated agreement of generations of Penang residents that these 4 stalls, these 4 dishes, these 4 cooks are operating at a level that has no peer. The title is given freely and received with the quiet acceptance of people who know it is true. The specific stalls included in the 4 Heavenly Kings vary slightly depending on which Penangite you ask and which era they are speaking from. The designation has been applied and reapplied over decades as the original masters aged, retired, or died, and new consensus formed around their successors. But the core 4, the dishes that define the designation, are consistent. We are going to cover each one in full. The history of the dish, the specific person or stall that holds the Heavenly King title, what makes their version extraordinary, and where to find them. The first Heavenly King, Char Kway Teow. Char Kway Teow, the most debated, most celebrated, most argued over dish in all Penang. Flat rice noodles stir-fried in a wok over intense heat with dark soy sauce, light soy sauce, chili paste, cockles, prawns, Chinese lap Cheong sausage, bean sprouts, and egg. The dish takes about 3 minutes to cook. It requires decades to perfect. The defining characteristic of Great Penang Char Kway Teow, the thing that separates the transcendent from the merely very good, is wok hee. Wok hee is a Cantonese term that translates approximately as breath of the wok. It refers to the specific smoky, slightly charred, intensely savory quality that comes from cooking at extremely high heat in a well-seasoned cast iron wok that has absorbed decades of oils and flavors. Wok hee cannot be manufactured. It cannot be hurried. It is the product of heat, experience, and a wok that has been used continuously long enough to have developed a seasoning that is irreplaceable. The master most frequently cited as holding the Char Kway Teow Heavenly King title operates from a stall in the Lorong Salamat area of Georgetown. The specific address circulated among food lovers like a closely guarded secret, though in practice it is findable with a simple search. The stall operates in the morning, runs out of the day's ingredients typically by early afternoon, and on weekends the queue can begin forming before the stall opens.
What distinguishes this version specifically is the heat management. The wok is fired at a temperature that most hawkers cannot sustain. The oil at the edge of the wok smokes. The noodles char slightly on contact. The cockles are added at the specific moment when the heat will cook them through without toughening them. The dish comes off the wok in under 3 minutes, every plate individual, every plate slightly different because the wok temperature and the cook's read of the specific batch of ingredients changes slightly every time. It is performance and craft simultaneously. The cockles, hum in Hokkien, are a point of specific differentiation in Penang Char Kway Teow. The best versions use blood cockles that are plump, fresh, and just barely cooked so that they retain a slight translucency and a brininess that cuts through the richness of the soy and the fat. Getting the cockles right, sourcing them fresh, adding them at the right moment, pulling the dish before they overcook is one of the marks of a true master. The Lorong Salamat stall's cockles are, by the consensus of everyone who has eaten there, exactly right. The second Heavenly King, Penang Hokkien mee. Penang Hokkien mee, also called prawn mee outside Penang, a name that Penangites find slightly irritating in its inadequacy, is a prawn and pork broth noodle soup of extraordinary complexity. The broth is everything. It is the foundation, the point, the reason the dish exists. And making a great Penang Hokkien mee broth requires time, technique, and ingredients that most hawkers cannot or do not source. The broth is made from 2 primary elements. First, the prawn shell stock, dried prawns and fresh prawn heads and shells roasted until deeply caramelized, then simmered in water for hours until the prawn flavor has been extracted to its most concentrated and complex state. Second, the pork bone stock, pork ribs and pork bones simmered separately until the collagen breaks down and the stock becomes slightly gelatinous and deeply savory. The 2 stocks are combined at a ratio that varies by cook and that is guarded like a state secret. The result, in the best versions, is a broth that is simultaneously sweet from the prawns, savory from the pork, and rich in a way that coats the mouth and builds in intensity as you work through the bowl. Into this broth go yellow noodles and rice vermicelli in combination, blanched prawns, slices of pork, hard-boiled egg, water spinach, and a spoonful of sambal belacan, fermented shrimp paste chili that you stir into the broth to create a heat and a depth that transforms the dish from rich to extraordinary. The Heavenly King of Penang Hokkien mee operates from a coffee shop in the New Lane area. The specific stall has changed hands over generations, but the lineage of the recipe has been maintained. The broth here is made from a base stock that has been simmering in the same pot, refreshed daily with new ingredients but never fully emptied, for decades. The age of the broth is part of the recipe. The stall opens at 7 in the morning and runs until the broth runs out. On a normal day, this happens by 10 or 11. On a weekend, it can happen earlier. Coming at 7 means a short queue and a full bowl. Coming at 9 means a longer queue and increasingly concentrated broth as the day's stock reduces. Coming at noon on a Sunday means finding the stall closed and wondering why you did not set an alarm. The third Heavenly King, Cheong fun. Cheong fun is the dish that most surprises visitors when they encounter it in Penang for the first time, both in its simplicity and in how extraordinary it manages to be within that simplicity.
Cheong fun means pig intestine noodles in Cantonese, a name that refers to the appearance of the rice rolls rather than their ingredients. They are sheets of steamed rice flour batter, rolled while still hot into cylinders and served with a set of sauces and toppings that defines the specific regional variation. In Hong Kong, Cheong fun is typically served with Char pork inside, or with a simple sweet soy sauce. In Penang, it is something different and something more complex. Penang Cheong fun is served with a combination of sauces that together create a flavor profile unlike anything in the Cantonese. There is sweet prawn paste sauce, hei ko, a thick, sticky, intensely savory sauce made from fermented prawns that is specific to Penang and that provides the foundational depth of flavor. There is sweet sauce, there is chili sauce, there are sesame seeds, there is sometimes a fried shallot garnish. The rice roll itself should be silky, soft, and slightly sticky, fresh from the steamer, still warm, yielding under the chopsticks in a way that signals the rice batter was made correctly and the steaming time was judged precisely. The Heavenly King of Cheong fun in Penang is typically identified as the stall in Kimberley Street, the same street that is part of Georgetown's heritage zone and that has been a center of Penang hawker food for generations. The master at this stall is known specifically for the hei ko, the prawn paste sauce, which is made to a recipe that involves a fermentation and cooking process that produces a depth of flavor that other versions of the sauce do not achieve. The rice rolls themselves are made fresh every morning from a batter prepared according to a ratio of rice flour to water that produces a specific texture. The combination, the silky roll, the layered sauces, the freshly fried shallots, is a study of what restraint and precision can achieve.
Cheong fun is one of those dishes that seems, on paper, too simple to generate the kind of devotion it produces in people who have eaten the Penang version at its best. Then you eat it, and you understand that simplicity and ease are not the same thing. That producing something this good within this many constraints is harder, not easier, than producing something complex. And that the Heavenly King designation for a dish this apparently modest is not ironic. It is completely accurate. The fourth Heavenly King, Lor Me. Lor Me is the dark horse of the four Heavenly Kings, the one that fewer visitors know about before they arrive in Penang, the one that surprises people most dramatically when they encounter it, and the one that produces the most evangelical converts. Lor Me is a Hokkien noodle dish. The defining element is the gravy, a thick, dark, intensely savory sauce made from a braised pork and egg base thickened with cornstarch or tapioca starch to a consistency that coats the noodles completely rather than simply surrounding them. Into this gravy go thick yellow noodles, braised pork belly, braised egg, fish cake, fried fritters, and bean sprouts. The whole dish is finished with a generous spoonful of black vinegar and a spoonful of raw garlic, two additions that cut through the richness of the gravy and transform what would otherwise be a very heavy dish into something balanced and complex. The Penang version of Lor Me is specifically associated with the Hokkien dialect community of the island. It is a dish that evolved in Penang from Hokkien Chinese culinary traditions and that has developed here over generations into something specific to this place. The variations between individual stalls in the spice profile of the braise, the thickness and color of the gravy, the ratio of vinegar to garlic in the finish are significant enough that Penangites identify their preferred stall with the loyalty that other people reserve for their football team. The Heavenly King of Lor Me is most consistently identified as operating from a coffee shop in the Jalan Penang area of Georgetown. The stall's braising stock, the foundation of the gravy, has been developed over decades of continuous operation, and the specific combination of 5-spice, soy, dark sugar, and thyme that produces it is not written down anywhere. The braised pork belly is cooked to the point where the fat has rendered completely, but the meat holds its structure, a technical achievement that requires precise timing and a deep familiarity with how the specific pork being used that day behaves in the braise. The black vinegar and garlic finish is dispensed by the cook, not left to the customer. At this stall, the balance is not negotiable. Eating Lor Me at the Heavenly King level is an experience of textural complexity.
The silky noodles, the yielding pork belly, the firm fish cake, the crunch of the fritters which have absorbed some of the gravy but retained enough of their fried texture to provide contrast. The gravy itself, which is thick enough to hold everything in suspension, but fluid enough to be eaten with the noodles rather than simply sitting under them. The vinegar cutting through, the raw garlic arriving last, sharp and present. It is a bowl that reveals itself in layers from first spoonful to last. Part 5. Why these four and why now? Understanding the four heavenly kings requires understanding something about mastery and time, and the specific conditions that produce both. Each of the four stalls operates on a model that is not economically rational by most contemporary measures. They cook less, not more, as demand increases. They refuse to expand. They refuse to franchise. They refuse to modify their recipes for efficiency or cost reduction. They have not scaled. They have not optimized. They have done the same thing the same way for decades, and the result of that specific refusal to compromise is what you taste in the bowl. The wok hee in the Kway is not replicable in a larger setup. The depth in the Hokkien mee broth is not achievable without the decades of continuous simmering. The specific fermentation of the hei ko for the Cheong fun is not something you can manufacture at scale. The braising stock in the lor mee is not something that can be started fresh and matched in flavor within any reasonable time frame. These dishes are what they are because of the specific, individual, irreplaceable accumulated expertise and materials of the specific people who make them. They cannot be franchised because the franchise would not be the same thing. This is also why the future of the four heavenly kings is one of the most discussed and most anxious topics in Penang food culture. These are aging masters. The Kway uncle who has been at his wok for 40 years is not young. The succession question, who learns the recipe, who takes the stall, whether the next generation of the family wants to do what their parents and grandparents did, is one that haunts every conversation about Penang's hawker future. Some of the heavenly king stalls have successors in training. Some have family members who have been working alongside the master for years, absorbing the technique and the recipe through observation and practice rather than documentation. Some are more uncertain. The specific combination of knowledge and material, the seasoned wok, the aged braising stock, the fermented sauce, the accumulated muscle memory of producing the same dish thousands of times is not easily transferred. Some of it cannot be transferred at all. Some of it will leave the world with the person who holds it. This is why going to Penang now and eating at these stalls now matters, not as a bucket list exercise, as an act of genuine engagement with something irreplaceable while it still exists. The four heavenly kings will not be the four heavenly kings forever. The window is not closed yet, but it is not as wide as it was. Part 6. How to do it right. Going to the four heavenly kings is not a complicated exercise, but it requires some planning, some timing discipline, and the right mindset. Let me save you the mistakes that first-time visitors make. Go early. This is the single most important piece of advice for every one of these stalls. The Hokkien mee broth runs out before noon on most days and before 10 on weekends. The Char Teow uncle does not rush, and the queue on weekend mornings can be 90 minutes. Getting there before 8 gives you the freshest product and a manageable wait. Getting there at 10 on a Sunday is a different and more frustrating experience. Go on a weekday if you have any flexibility. The tourist crowds at these stalls, which have become internationally known through food media coverage, are significantly lower on weekday mornings. The queue is shorter, the atmosphere is more local. You are eating alongside the Penangites who have been coming to this stall their entire lives, rather than the visitors who discovered it through a YouTube video. Both experiences are valid. The weekday version is better. Do not expect service. The heavenly kings do not explain their dishes, do not offer modifications, do not particularly acknowledge that you are there until your order is called. This is not rudeness. This is the specific concentration of a person who is producing something at the absolute limit of their skill and has no bandwidth to manage your experience of waiting. Your job is to order, pay, sit down, and receive. Their job is to cook. The transaction is simple and beautiful in its simplicity. Eat at the coffee shop where the stall operates, not on the street. The atmosphere of eating Char Kway Teow in the same coffee shop where it has been eaten for 40 years, the marble tables, the old wooden chairs, the ceiling fans, the other patrons eating without drama is part of the experience. It contextualizes the food in the culture that produced it. A food delivery service or a takeaway box is not the same thing. And finally, if you queue for 40 minutes and the food is extraordinary, which it will be, do not immediately think about how to bring it to a wider audience, how to post about it, how to scale it, how to replicate it somewhere more convenient. Just eat it. Think about the 40 years that produced it. Think about the fact that you are eating something that cannot be found anywhere in the world, and appreciate it fully while it is in front of you before it is gone. Penang's 4 heavenly kings are not famous in the way that Michelin-starred restaurants are famous. They are not famous in the way that viral food videos are famous. They are famous in the specific, local, undeniable way that mastery becomes famous when a community recognizes it and names it and makes the pilgrimage to it generation after generation. The Char Kway Teow uncle before his walk before sunrise, the Hokkien mee broth that has been simmering longer than most of its customers have been alive, the Cheong with its layered sauces assembled with the quiet precision of someone who has made this 10,000 times, the lower mee with its dark gravy and its vinegar finish dispensed by someone who knows the ratio better than any recipe could express. These are 4 of the greatest things you can eat anywhere in Asia. They are available to anyone willing to get up early, stand in a queue, and bring the kind of attention to a bowl of food that the food deserves. Go to Penang, wake up early, find the queues, stand in them without complaint, and eat. If this video put any of these stalls on your list, hit the like button, subscribe for more Penang and Malaysia food and travel content, and drop a comment below. Have you eaten at any of the 4 heavenly kings? Which one destroyed you most? I want to know. I read everything. See you in the next one.